We all walk around with this quiet background assumption playing on a loop in our heads.
Yeah, we really do.
It's the assumption that we have infinite time. I mean, you wake up, you pour your coffee, you check your emails.
Just the normal daily routine.
Right. And you just implicitly assume that there are thousands of more mornings exactly like this one just waiting for you.
Like it's guaranteed.
Exactly. We view the future as this endless, wide-open field of possibilities, achievements, transformations, you name it.
But what happens when that illusion shatters?
That is the big question. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're exploring a really profound essay and its accompanying social media post by an author named Kaia Solene.
The piece is titled, "When Life Forces Us to Grow."
And our mission for this deep dive is to explore the psychological shock of confronting our own mortality.
To look at the unmovable boundaries of human existence.
Yeah, and to see how losing our imagined future might actually be the key to truly living in the present. So, okay, let's unpack this, because this concept of endless time is something we base our entire identities on.
We really do. We build our identities heavily on what we believe we will become.
Right. Not who we are, but who we're going to be.
Exactly. We plan our careers, we imagine our ideal relationships. We literally postpone our joy.
We don't live in the now, we live in the someday.
And the author points out that this creates a dynamic where we are constantly measuring the present moment against an imagined future.
Think about how often we tell ourselves that we will finally be happy or peaceful or successful just as soon as certain conditions are met down the road.
Like, oh, I'll relax when I get that promotion.
Or I'll enjoy my life when the kids are older.
Yes. We end up living inside a story of our lives rather than actually living our lives.
Solene argues that most people spend the majority of their time inside a narrative constructed entirely by thought.
Just mental constructs.
Right. It's the goals, the regrets, the hopes, the expectations. It's the mental movie we direct about who we are and where we are going.
And because we are so heavily invested in that wide-open future, if someone were told that their life would end years or even decades earlier than expected,
the immediate response of the mind is sheer panic.
Total panic. It's fear, grief, and intense resistance to the rewrite of that mental movie.
What's fascinating here is the non-dual perspective the text brings into the conversation.
Wait, I should probably break that down simply for the listener. A non-dual perspective is essentially experiencing the world without the constant filter of me versus everything else.
Just dropping the labels.
Exactly. From this viewpoint, the grand narrative we construct about our lives isn't necessarily a lie, but it is absolutely not the deepest level of reality.
It's just the surface.
Right. Beneath all of that constructed story, beneath the anxieties about your 5-year plan or your regrets about last week, lies something incredibly simple.
The direct experience of being aware.
Yes. It is just seeing, hearing, feeling, breathing.
These pure sensory experiences happen in a fraction of a second before the mind can even jump in.
Before I can grab them and organize them into the grand narrative of my life.
But our minds are so loud.
They are very loud.
They prioritize that complex story over the immediate, quiet experience of living. I mean, it feels so much more important to worry about a retirement fund than to just notice the temperature of the air in the room.
Because the story feels safe.
Does it?
Well, to the mind it does. If we focus on the raw, unpredictable present, we lose a sense of control.
Ah, I see.
The text challenges us to realize that the infinite potential we so deeply believe in, that beautiful, controllable future, is largely just a projection of the mind.
The reality of being alive in this exact moment has always been there, just waiting for us to notice it.
By obsessing over the narrative, we risk overlooking the only moment in which life actually exists.
Which is right now.
Exactly.
Which brings up a really tough question for you listening right now. Are you living your real life, or are you just living the illusion of it?
That's a heavy question.
It is. Are you constantly waiting for the conditions of your imagined future to be met before you allow yourself to fully inhabit the present?
Are you holding your breath until someday arrives?
That kind of inquiry leads directly into the author's exploration of boundaries.
Right. According to the text, the sense of being a separate individual who stands apart from life and can somehow engineer or control it is just another construction of thought.
To truly engage with reality, we have to look at the boundaries of human existence.
The unmovable boundaries.
Yes. The author asks us to consider boundaries that cannot be pushed, bypassed, transformed, avoided, or denied through sheer willpower or positive thinking.
The essay outlines 3 fundamental limits that every single human being faces. regardless of wealth, status, or spiritual enlightenment.
The first one is the most obvious, yet it's the one we ignore the most.
Death.
Death. The physical body is finite.
No amount of biohacking, green juice, or personal achievement is going to remove the biological fact that our physical organism will eventually cease to function.
Time moves in one direction, and every single life has a hard endpoint.
And then the second boundary is impermanence.
Right. The mind simply cannot secure the future.
It cannot gain permanent control over life. We try to lock down reality with contracts, insurance policies, rigid routines, but the truth is, life is chaotic.
No matter how adaptable, intelligent, or capable the mind becomes, it cannot transform itself or its environment into something permanent and invulnerable.
Everything changes constantly.
Which perfectly sets up the third boundary, the separate self.
The author points out that the egoic identity is not a permanent, solid thing.
To put that in simpler terms, imagine a folder on your computer desktop. You give it a name, you think of it as one distinct object, but really it's just a temporary collection of random files, documents, and code.
That's a great analogy. Our egoic identity, the me we think we are, is just like that folder.
It's a temporary collection of thoughts, memories, preferences, and emotions.
We walk around thinking of ourselves as these incredibly stable, rock-solid entities moving through time, shaping our destinies.
But the reality is far more fluid, fragile, and uncertain.
Accepting those boundaries is crucial to the author's philosophy.
The text emphasizes that being human and living in a vulnerable physical body is a boundary to accept, not a problem to solve or a prison to escape.
We have to embrace it as an embodied presence.
Now, it's interesting because Kaia takes this deeply personal concept of the separate, controllable self and applies it to society at large, specifically critiquing Western individualism.
Right, and keeping in mind that as guides on this deep dive, we are purely exploring the framework laid out in the essay.
Exactly. We are absolutely not taking a side or endorsing this viewpoint. We just want to understand how she connects personal psychology to systemic structures.
It is a significant pivot in her essay. She argues that the intense Western admiration of individual freedom and self-reliance actually has a severe downside when taken to its extreme.
She writes that this hyper-focus on individualism leads to deep societal discrimination and widespread experiences of extreme separation.
The essay provides some very stark examples to illustrate this perspective.
It talks about children being left entirely alone to deal with their complex feelings because society prioritizes independence so early.
It points to ruthless employment practices, where workers are locked into hyper-competitive, outcome-based contracts with zero compensation or safety nets if they don't hit the desired targets.
It paints a picture of a culture that values what you produce over the fact that you simply exist.
And the critique extends to the legislative and systemic level as well.
Yeah, the author argues that societal decision-makers often establish laws that polarize the population and completely abandon vulnerable groups, specifically the sick, the elderly, and the unemployed.
In her framework, anyone whose impact on society is deemed not useful or who is viewed as taking resources rather than serving the economic machine is marginalized.
From her perspective, these are the inevitable outcomes of a society that has prioritized the illusion of separation over the collective good.
She states clearly that good societal leadership should prioritize equality and the common well-being of everyone, rather than incentivizing individualistic separation and competition.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how fighting against unmovable boundaries creates immense suffering across the board.
On a personal level, trying to engineer our way out of our own finite, vulnerable nature causes chronic anxiety.
And on a societal level, the author suggests that engineering systems based on a false sense of separate, invulnerable individualism leads to systemic cruelty.
True freedom comes from accepting our shared vulnerability and our finite boundaries, rather than trying to compete or transcend our way out of them.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Up until this point, we've been talking about these concepts in a somewhat philosophical, almost academic way.
Death, impermanence, the egoic identity, they are fascinating to discuss theoretically.
But the author, Kaia Solene, experienced a brutal collision with these realities in her own life. This wasn't just a thought experiment for her to write an essay about.
No, it was a very physical, undeniable crisis that pulled her entirely out of the theoretical and into the visceral.
She writes about going to the doctor for some completely unrelated symptoms. Just a routine checkup, the kind of mundane errand you squeeze into a Tuesday afternoon.
And while she was there, going through standard blood tests and routine examinations, she received some devastating news.
She discovered that she had inherited dangerously high blood pressure from her father.
The text uses a very specific, chilling medical phrase for this condition.
It's known as a silent killer.
It earns that name because the human body provides absolutely no warning signs. You don't feel sick, you don't feel tired, you don't have dizzy spells or chest pains.
You have no idea that your internal cardiovascular system is operating under this extreme, life-threatening pressure.
But the stakes of that invisible pressure are incredibly high. The text notes that left untreated, this specific condition is statistically known to shorten a person's life expectancy by several years or even tens of years.
Tens of years, decades just wiped off the map of your imagined future in the time it takes a doctor to read a chart.
And not only that, but it carries the constant hovering risk of sudden, unexpected cardiac arrest.
You could just drop while making breakfast.
The impact of this discovery on the author was massive. She went into that clinic assuming she had a wide-open future and walked out, forced to confront her own mortality 10 to 20 years earlier than she ever expected to.
What makes this personal anecdote so compelling is the author's professional and philosophical background.
She actively taught people about navigating the mind.
She specifically taught what are called subject-object shifts.
To break that term down, a subject-object shift is the mental practice of stepping back from an overwhelming emotion. Instead of being the subject caught in the storm, saying, I am angry or I am terrified, you shift to become the object observing it.
Saying, I'm noticing a feeling of anger.
Right. She was a practitioner of learning to embody presence and detach from the ego.
She literally taught the very philosophy we are discussing. And yet she admits with incredible vulnerability that this physical crisis still shattered her.
When her actual physical heart was threatened, all that intellectual armor vanished.
It proves that intellectual understanding is very different from lived reality. You can read all the books on mindfulness in the world, but life will test the nature of your knowing.
You can't just conceptualize acceptance. You have to actually live it when the psychological safety net drops away.
This diagnosis forced a complete, radical shift in her lifestyle, her routines, and her diet.
But more importantly, it forced a much deeper, more authentic level of peace, silence, and stillness into her life than she had ever experienced through her teachings alone.
Because suddenly, she had no choice. She couldn't intellectualize her way out of a biological boundary.
This raises an important question, one that the author explicitly poses to the reader. What if the limitation already exists?
What if the timeline is already set?
We walk around assuming serious limitations, sudden diagnoses, and tragic accidents happen to other people, and that our lives will just naturally continue into old age.
But a physical crisis shatters that illusion. It forces an immediate, non-negotiable shift from a future-based identity to a present-based awareness.
Because suddenly, that future you were relying on to bring you fulfillment might not even be available to you.
You can't postpone your joy to retirement if retirement isn't guaranteed.
Earlier, we discussed how the immediate reaction to this kind of contraction of the future is pure fear and grief. It feels like the strong sense of your personal life story is ending before the final chapter.
But the author highlights this incredibly beautiful paradox that emerges right out of the center of that panic.
The collapse of fear.
It's kind of like gripping a rope that's dragging you along the ground. The friction burns, the panic is overwhelming, and you are exhausted trying to hold on.
But the moment you realize you can just let go of the rope, let go of trying to control the uncontrollable, let go of fighting the unmovable boundary, the fear simply evaporates.
When the mind finally stops trying to escape its fundamental limits, the intense pressure to control every outcome begins to soften.
And when that pressure softens, the present moment just floods in.
The text describes how, once the illusion of endless time fades, the smallest, most ordinary things suddenly become incredibly vivid and deeply meaningful.
It's a literal warmth of sunlight on your skin.
It's the simple, mechanical act of your breath moving in and out of your lungs.
It's a completely ordinary conversation with a friend about nothing in particular.
The present moment stops being a stepping stone to a future goal.
It becomes the only place where life is actually happening.
Doing the dishes isn't just a chore you rush through to get to the next part of your day. Doing the dishes becomes an experience in itself.
The intense, exhausting struggle to turn your life into a grand, perfectly orchestrated story loses its grip on you.
You stop acting in the movie of your life and start actually living it. So what does this all mean? How do we actually apply this without having to wait for a terrifying medical diagnosis to shake us awake?
The author calls this state living embodied presence.
It is the conscious act of surrendering to life exactly as it comes to you in the physical body.
It means experiencing reality without constantly pushing away what you don't want or pulling desperately at what you do want.
It's letting go of the need to guarantee outcomes.
Importantly, the text notes that our destiny isn't fixed by our family background, our physical conditions, or the societal rules we were socialized into.
She calls all of those things illusions that we have to shed in order to become aware of the true self.
They might seem like the defining permanent factors of our lives, our careers, our medical charts, our societal status, but they are just the surface layer.
They are just the files inside that temporary desktop folder.
Realizing this, achieving this state of living embodied presence does not magically erase your daily struggles.
You still have to pay bills. You still have to navigate the complexities of relationships and the difficulties of modern life.
But it completely transforms how you relate to those struggles. You are acting from a place of deep, grounded acceptance rather than frantic, future-obsessed resistance.
It's a fundamental shift from living in thoughts about life to living in the direct experience of life.
We cannot control the length of our lives or bypass the unmovable boundaries of our biology, but we absolutely have a say in the depth of our lives.
To synthesize the journey of this deep dive, we started by looking at how the background assumption of endless time keeps us trapped in a fictional future.
We postpone our actual lives for a tomorrow that isn't promised.
But by bravely confronting our unmovable boundaries, especially the undeniable reality of our own finite mortality, we strip away that illusion.
What we are left with is not despair or nihilism, but a profound, vibrant anchoring in the beauty and immediacy of the present moment.
And that brings us right back to you listening to this right now. The author's piece asks some incredibly sharp questions that we want to pass directly to you.
How do you know what limitation already exists in your life that you simply haven't discovered yet?
Are you measuring today, this very moment, against an imagined future that may never actually arrive?
Have you been living your real life, or just the stressful, exhausting illusion of your real life?
They are not comfortable questions to sit with.
They disrupt the narrative we work so hard to maintain, but they are absolutely necessary if we want to experience the true depth of life the author describes.
They really are. And we want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day.
Building on everything we've explored from Kaia Solene's work.
Think about this. If you were to discover tomorrow that your own timeline was drastically shorter than you thought, and not so you could rush out and complete some frantic adrenaline-fueled bucket list, but just so you could truly be, which entirely ordinary, mundane routine in your current daily life would suddenly become your absolute favorite part of the day?
That is a deeply powerful way to reframe the value of the present moment.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep exploring, and we'll catch you next time.